But yeah, you can report.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Who are you with? Just a concerned citizen?
I live here in town,
Okay,
trying to make sure that we can lock down all the arguments possible in the proper language that's said here.
and that's what we gotta do.
Yeah.
So. Couple more minutes.
Place would be full, Chuck.
Huh?
I figured it'd be full in there.
You know, I was hoping. I'd really like to hear from people.
Well, you'll hear from them after the fact.
Yeah. You know, you and I are pretty safe. Your business may be, I don't know, I haven't observed your business in the floodplain. There's a huge map back there.
Out of it.
It's out of it.
Yeah, the lot is
The
in it.
lot is in it next to the river, but if I look at the map right, the shop is out of it.
Yeah. And
You're in a situation where they're asking you to cover your assets in case your water.
Like I say, I priced it from back then to
You know?
this year, I went, 450% went up. Yeah.
you know what? If you would like, set it right there on that table. That's where the reporters all put theirs.
I didn't want to interrupt any of your official proceeding.
No.
I mean, I've met you before. I know how unlikable I am.
Well,
Increase that. No, I smell it in there. Just wondering because they call it a open participation program.
I don't know if you did last night.
Worked for them for so long, I know exactly how to do it and stuff like this that at least let it down.
well, I'm gonna call this workshop to order. This is basically just an open forum. We're here to discuss, past Councilman John Nelson brought it to the council over the FEMA flood map. And, we've been going back and forth. I have talked to several of the state reps or the federal reps and, I don't know if that had anything to do, but we finally got a letter from FEMA saying we had 90 days. They gave us 90 days to address their map. So I called the meeting shortly after we got that letter. I advertised for this meeting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nelson to speak first, since he had all the pertinent information in the beginning.
All right.
So, and please feel, you guys feel free to move forward if you want to.
You want me to start big picture or I don't know where we're at?
You know, if you could give us a brief overview and then come to where we're at right now.
I would be lying if I even said it, so I won't try to get Kate's exact, but it was before I was on the council. I think I was a candidate, so that would have been 2018 was the first time I was involved in a public meeting by FEMA to the town of Saratoga. It was an open house kind of thing at the community center. And they presented a map at that time. And the map has changed a little bit over a couple of different iterations that have been released since 2018. But the glaring thing that appeared to myself and a number of the other residents that were there in 2018 was some of the anomalies on this map. It was obviously increasing the floodplain areas drastically within town. To its credit, it cleans up some of the anomalies that existed in the previous map where we had floodplains up on 13th Street. So, depending upon who you ask and where you live, it may not be all bad, but I think that the important point and the thing that has motivated me to be vigilant on this process over the last 5-6 years is that there is I think a real problem in the way that the map divides neighbors and blocks and adjacent property owners from having to participate in the flood insurance program and not. And so that's what really caused me to take an interest in it. And over the last few years, I've had quite a bit of correspondence with FEMA. And last winter, we got some information directly from them that I considered more of a smoking gun, if you will, in terms of a problem with their model. And that was kind of new information at the time. That's when I came to your council meeting or whatever that was in January, February. I was just off, and so I got some information at that time that I think is technical evidence that there are some problems with the model. The most glaring of which, if I can find it real quick, is a chart that they provided to me and to us. And my left in your office. That graph or that table that showed the proposed flood elevation for this model versus the 2011.
It's not back there, is it?
Sorry for
That's okay.
having that ready.
Just a workshop.
But basically what it shows, and we'll get to the numbers here in a second, but what it shows is that the predicted water surface elevation for their 100-year flood in this model, the basis for having to participate in this flood insurance program, being compelled to participate in it, is lower than the water surface elevation in the river that we saw in 2011. For their data, the 2011 water surface elevation and their current modeling water surface elevation is something we hadn't had both from FEMA together before, and now we have it in their own spreadsheet together. We can look at it and see that there's a difference. And I think that just doesn't check out. It's not right. We know what the river did in 2011. And yep, that's it. And so in 2011, from the historic crests on our spreadsheet, the water surface elevation was 6786.99. And their model of the 100-year flood event is 6786.8. So we're only talking inches here, but it's less. And so if we didn't see these areas of town completely inundated in structure compromising water in 2011, then how with less water and a lower water surface elevation would we see it in their predicted flood model? We can go into the merits of their whole program, which are probably,
In 2011, the river never reached the height, and we had it leaving the banks in 2011, but it never reached the height that FEMA's modeled for the town.
What they're saying is that it got higher than their model for the town.
Oh,
That their model for the town is based on a lower flood than what we had in 2011.
okay.
And so if we didn't see water in all these areas of town in 2011, how could with less with a lower water surface elevation, could that happen? The response I got from FEMA when I asked that question to them was, well, you had flood mitigation measures in place in 2011. So all the sandbagging that the Army Corps did with you is what prevented that. And I said, well, none of the storm sewers were actually blocked off in 2011. So you could go outside the rustic bar in 2011 and look down into this inlet through the grate and see water standing in the inlet that was at the same water surface elevation as the river. All of the sewers in town throughout all of the flood events we've had have always remained connected to the river. And so the fact that there were sandbags along the river bank protecting the bank residents, with the storm sewer being opened underneath those sandbags, doesn't account for it not flooding in 2011 the way that they said. So what I believe the error in their model is related to specifically is the way that they've drawn the base or the cross-sectional lines that are then used to establish base flood elevations in a cross-sectional manner as you go through town. And the expansion and contraction coefficients that they use to the bridges. I know that's getting a little technical, but those are arbitrary values that they have assigned. And the way that they've drawn those cross-sectional lines is also arbitrary. And I would argue that any flood modeling technician would draw them differently than they're drawn by the person who did this one. It's a subjective input into the model. And if you change it subjectively, somebody else could draw them and it would still be a perfectly fine model, but you would get a very different answer in terms of how much think would be on this map. And so what I would, I guess, ask as a private citizen or encourage the council to consider or recommend is maybe too strong of a word, but what I think we ought to do as a town is find somebody who is an expert in flood mapping and modeling and ask them to review this and give us some guidance on. I think that the first question is do we have a leg to stand on here? Is where this crazy engineer that lives in town saying hold water, no pun intended. And if they say, yeah, we could run an analysis and recreate this model and I think, help you prove your point, then, help us figure out what kind of cost that might be. And then we can consider whether or not that's something that's in the town's best interest. But, I know as a civil engineer, I know enough about this to be dangerous, but I am certainly not a hydrologist or a flood expert, and I'm not the right person to really rely on for this analysis, but I need somebody who is.
Okay. Do you know of anybody close by?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I think there is a firm in Cheyenne that I don't know this for a fact. I'd have to call them and ask them. I'm happy to do that if you guys would like me to.
Please.
HDR is the name that comes to mind. They're a very large firm, and so they have a really deep bench when it comes to different specializations within civil engineering. And so I don't know for a fact, but I would imagine that they've got to have somebody in their roster that's, maybe even come from FEMA.
Okay.
They've hired a lot of people that have come out of public sector into their private sector companies. So it wouldn't surprise me if we picked up the phone and they said, oh yeah, Bob down the hall here, he used to work at FEMA and do exactly this. So he's the guy you want to talk to.
Yeah.
That'd be a place to start. And then I don't know the names off the top of my head, but there are smaller companies in the Front Range that work primarily, I think, for private developers like you know, you're a developer and you want to build a shopping center and, you know, east of Fort Collins, and you got to do some floodplain mitigation and some wetland mitigation and all that stuff. I think there's some smaller firms that specialize in that kind of stuff. So we can find out who they are.
Would you mind reaching out to that individual and letting Emery know?
Yep.
Or,
We'll get somebody figured out.
yeah. Do you guys have any questions for John? On that? We got, and I think John would agree with this, if we've got to fight them with some sort of technical, I mean, just because we write a letter and tell them how unfair it is and the BS we think it is, that's not going to work. We're going to have some facts, I believe.
Yep.
Would everybody agree to that?
Unfortunately, we've tried that. We
Yeah.
tried that when I was on the council. Case in point, I think it was September of 22, if I recall correctly. The latest revision of this was released and provided to us, and they said we tweaked it a little bit, but there's no major changes, and that was basically true. It hadn't changed in any significant way. But at that time, we had a follow-up call with them. And when I say we, it was myself and Kathy Beck and Lenny Lehman with the county was also on that call as a representative of the county. And I expressed the same concerns about, you know, these anomalies and, you know, guys, it just doesn't make sense. I don't know how you can say it's going to flood right down Walnut Street, but it's not going to flood right down Elm Street. You know, they're right next to each other. Or why is my neighbor's yard going to flood, but my yard isn't? When we can all stand there and look at the ground and see that there is no difference in elevation, right? And so we asked them if they would consider coming up and spending the day with us, members of the town council at the time, or Lenny with the county was willing to do it and do a boots on the ground, kind of ground truthing site visit. And we thought that would be helpful. They declined to do that. They said they didn't have the budget to have the travel. I offered to reimburse them personally for all of their fuel. They declined. And then Lenny sent another letter formally. It may not have been a letter, it might have just been an email, but a formal written request to please reconsider coming and doing a site visit, and they declined that as well. So it's been really frustrating because I think if you got the guy out of the cubicle who drew those lines,
Yeah.
I think they would understand why we are concerned about
Yeah.
the results of the model. I think I have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're smart enough to see it if they see it with their own eyes. You could argue that, but I would give them the benefit of that doubt. But the fact that they won't even come, take us up on that invitation has been really frustrating, and I think just proves the point that they're looking for customers. They don't really care who they are.
Yeah, exactly. What they're likely to do is, wouldn't surprise me if they just didn't make the whole town, the properties that aren't in the flood map. Now, okay, well, you're right. We're going to put that one in too. It'd be their theory. It would.
Yeah, I mean, not to get off the focus of what is going on here in town, but the National Flood Insurance Program is $20 billion in debt or something like that. I mean, it's a huge number with all the disasters that have happened on the coast, Katrina, and all of the claims and all of the expenditures that FEMA spends in a year. The vast majority of all that cost goes to 4 states. It's like Texas, Louisiana, Florida, California, and Virginia, I think it was. But whatever, it's like they're broke. The fund isn't solvent. They don't have enough revenue to continue doing emergency management in those places. And so they decided to remap the whole country and start picking up more customers in little places like Saratoga. I'm not saying we don't have a flood risk. We absolutely have a flood risk. But if you're going to mandate that I participate in your funding your government program, my 1% risk better be the exact same as the other person's 1% risk. And it's not. And we can see that by the premiums that are paid out. Not the premiums, the claims that are paid out. So,
Good point.
yeah, I mean, I did some math on that and it's like, you know, for what the state of Louisiana, for example, paid into the program over a 10-year period and what they got back out of it is, let's just say it's a 1-to-1. Where if you look at the last 10 years of data from Wyoming, even with the old maps, the money that Wyoming paid into the system, Wyoming residents paid into the system versus what was pumped back into Wyoming in terms of disaster relief is like a 20-to-1 or something.
Yeah.
So it's just, we're subsidizing a federal program that doesn't really it's not commensurate with what our actual risk is.
Well, thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John.
Yeah, you bet. I appreciate that. You know, even though there's not a whole lot of people here, there never have been. And like I said before, it's not going to be until people get their bills and they get the letter from the bank that says, we're gonna, you know.
Somebody goes to finance a new home and they're like, no, you're in the floodplain.
That's what I'm excited about it. Nobody's excited about it right now. It's not real yet.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you guys have continued to host the discussion and hear.
Well, you know, and at this time, I've got to thank Senator Loomis and hopefully Barrasso. I spoke to their reps on numerous occasions about this. Recently talked to Harriet Hageman, and they have run into this with other communities, according to her, that's looking at this too. So, but at least we got a response. Before we couldn't even get a response from them.
Yeah.
Only 90 days, but.
Right. One last point, if I may, is when it comes to having somebody who's, you know, technically qualified and proficient at doing this, which again, I am not. But one, you know, a very small adjustment in some of the inputs to this model can make a very big difference. And so one of the questions I asked FEMA back in January of 23 was, how did you select the end value for the river channel? The end value is basically the roughness coefficient. And so it's a factor that will affect the velocity of the water through the river. So the velocity with the same volume means higher water level, faster velocity, same volume, lower water level. And the answer I have in writing right here is the end value is 0.035, which is consistent with values from Chow 1957. So they took an estimated end value from a textbook from the 50s and used that to make this model. They have no idea. I asked if the channel was profiled. They said no.
Yeah.
So somebody who has the expertise could make an expert determination that that's not 0.035, but it's 0.034. You change that by 1,000th of a decimal, it's like 2 inches of water surface elevation. So it matters. These are the technical intricacies of the model. It's very sensitive to these arbitrary inputs. And my argument is that there's one of these factors, whether it's that end value or it's the constriction and contraction factors of the bridges, that they don't have it right. And if we get it right, that model's going to look like something that we can all look at and say, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Emery, would you like to add some of your expertise?
See, John probably covered most of it. That was really good. I think he's very right, and the path forward is getting someone to look at that model. We went through several things with the waveform construction, and like you said, that model, 4 or 5 numbers can change your water surface elevation. Even if it's a half a foot, it can bring whole sections of your map back in to your channel. And then looking at other ways to decrease it, like we had a short conversation about building levees, things like that, to try and bring flooding back into the channel. And with the amount of recreation accesses throughout town, over by the hot pool, that's probably not any kind of feasible alternative to this map. So getting a model to where it's realistic is probably the best path forward for sure. And with the word sanction being involved and not participating in the NFIP stage, we were to just go, hey, we're not gonna deal with this because we don't have to. FEMA can sanction you and there's a bunch of negative implications with that. We still have some access to disaster management, things like that, but after the fact cleanup, federal loans, if they're gonna, FHA, things like that, they're not gonna allow that. So the model is really the only answer we have to improve, if we can improve that. That's kind of our only option at this point. And then the thing between this new map and the old one is it will carry with the changes in the ordinances. There will be elevation certificates required for new builds, which means you'll have to get a surveyor to shoot your foundation when you get it ready to pour it. And after your house is done, to make sure that you're out of the floodplain, those will have to get filed here. So if that map gets pushed through, there will be ordinances that we'll have to adopt to be in compliance with that map. And that's gonna be, most of the town that's in the floodplain area is built out. So there wouldn't be an immense amount of change or addition to that process, but it's not convenient for someone who's trying to build a house, and it's totally unnecessary. Like if you're out here where we think it's probably not realistic that you flood and you've got to add a 1.5 or 2 feet of dirt to your lot before you can even start building your house. It's not very.
And it's not only that, it's trying to insure your house.
Yeah, and if you can get up and get out, and there on the FEMA side, there's a few lomas that have been done around here where if you do, and that's the idea, is you build up, they have you get above the base flood elevation, and then essentially your structure, your house is out of the floodplain, which brings your premium down. The rest of your ground is still in, but your house would be, which would reduce your policy quite a bit. We could find the guy and see if there's some opportunity there. I think Joe makes some really good points with the bridges.
I like that.
Sections are drawn. Make an improvement there.
So, John, if I bring it up at a council meeting where decisions can be made, would you work with Emery?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll get the council. It'll be kind of like a 2-man committee working on, maybe we can get something done in a short period of time. It'll all have to get approved in a council meeting, but
Yeah. Well, just to be clear on that, I would help, not as an engineer, as a citizen.
as a concerned citizen.
Right, just so we're clear on what my.
Yeah, no, not as an engineer, but just as a knowledgeable citizen who's been involved with this map. Work with Emery. Emery will do all the actual official asking and stuff like that. Would
No, absolutely.
does anybody else like to? Okay, all right. Maybe you guys can meet once in a while. We have 90 days, but I think I can get a hold of some representatives to put some more pressure on FEMA to say that we need more time.
Yeah, and if we thought, say we got a hold of somebody that had and maybe John can weigh in on this, if we got a hold of this engineer, hydrologist who was very versed and said, hey, you got a really good case here. This is significantly off. We could always file for a clomer and a letter of map revision after the fact too,
Okay,
which would not be ideal.
Yeah, because I think what would kick, if we did, that is an option, but is it your understanding that in the interim, between when the map is, when the model is adopted and then the vision is accepted, that everybody's going to get those letters and there's going to be chaos for a period. We'll be able to say, well, we're working on it, but there'll be a period there where it'll be kind of,
Right.
everything will be in.
well, I'm just thinking out loud, but it'll take time. If this engineering firm does have somebody, then it'll have to come back before the people at the council,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
and we'll have to get an RPF and so we can pay them, But that's to be decided in a council meeting, so. Okay. Any questions from the public? Sure, come right on up. This is open.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Can you speak? I'm Joe Frey. Way outside. In fact, if I ever get into the floodplain, we got a real problem. We'll find me, Jerry knows where I live. The gentleman that has spoken tonight already, they're really the subject matter experts, and I'm not going to bring anything that's going to come close to what they're talking about. I do have some individual layman concerns and probably some asymmetrical arguments that I'd like the council to consider, or at least the gentlemen that are going to be working on this. And kind of the answer to John's question, which he answered himself, was the problem with FEMA is they haven't and have refused to come here and look at the ground. And I think the biggest problem they have with that, knowing, because I've worked for the federal government for over 20 years, they're not unwilling to look at the ground, they're unwilling to look us in the face, they're unwilling to look at the people whose policies their decisions going to affect, and then go home and make the decisions on those policies the way they're making them now with their data. I was in the military and clearly remember the response to Katrina. And I wonder what was FEMA's vetting process at that time to make sure that the recipients of the FEMA support was only going to the people that had paid their flood insurance or within their flood maps at the time. I remember they were handing out everything, including cash gift cards to anybody that would just show up. In fact, there's still cases going on almost 20 years later. People coming in from out of state who receive that support that didn't have been in the state, let alone the area, and we're not paying those premiums. But I do know in Katrina that those premiums were lowered because of things like levies that ended up failing and mitigation that was in place by the state and the county before that happened, that had completely failed and fell apart when that situation happened. So my question really is, if this is an optional program, why aren't we considering the option of opting out? It was explained a little, it does more damage if something happens. But providing alternative support, mostly to the mortgage holders and the businesses whose insurance would require them to have flood insurance. And that's who I'm really going to speak to now. And the situation for me isn't the drawing of the flood map, because a lot of my ideas have to do with individuals that live in the current floodplain. But through those privately funded insurance programs, which as much of a fan I am not of things like grants, because that's still taxpayer dollars, we can find a way to reduce some of those rates, but I think it could be done through things we're already doing here in Carver County. Mayor Davis, yourself, you said that you weren't entirely clear of what information FEMA needed to disprove a flood map, which I think we all agree on. Even those that worked as hard as John on it don't understand what they need, because you keep giving them stuff and they keep saying, we're not even going to talk to you, let alone come see you. But the other thing you said was that you wanted to make sure that the people of Saratoga are treated fairly. I agree with that. And I think there's a way to look at that, even if this fight or this map change or our intent related to it fails. Personally, I found Saratoga in 2011. I was activated as the government to come out here. I'm sorry that I enjoyed my time here sandbagging so much that 5 years later, when I retired, I've been annoying you all with my presence for 8 years. I've tried to stay out of this chamber as much as possible, but I've been here and I may not have done the best of job as a shining citizen of Saratoga, but I've always cared and I've learned to love this community. And that's important because John mentioned those FEMA responses and flood levels from 2011. And I was here and I wasn't from here, but I really clearly remember them. And he's very correct. We didn't have that huge of an event. We had a massive concern that we were well prepared to execute on as National Guard, but there was a lot of work being done before that, not even in preparation for that event. Mitigation, things that were already put in place long prior to the season where it would have flooded. And monitoring. And this was before, I believe, Carver County didn't even have an emergency management department back then. You didn't have layman's department in 2011.
No, they did.
They had a manager.
Yeah, they had just a manager.
Definitely not with the resources that Carbon County has now. And that goes not only into processes and procedures, but practices that are regularly used now that legitimately mitigate the impacts. Even if we just had a better system like we do now, utilizing the old data structures and responses, we are in a better place because of what Carbon County's done. And I believe these mitigating factors, at least if are not a direct impact to the drawing of the map, should be of a direct impact to the rate in which the insurance is charged. Over the last 3 years, as we've improved and expanded our emergency management response in the county, we have operated under multiple grants. I don't work with Lenny Lehman. I'm just a fan of the fact that we've increased this department. He's done a lot of it on his own. A lot of it's been done through grants and private industry support and donations. We have not had to increase the impact of the taxpayer that much. These grants were already out there. They're going somewhere. They might as well come here. I don't like spending taxpayer dollars on stuff, but if they're going to spend it where I live. There's been the mass notification system that's been implemented that can be available on individual cell phones, if not their emails. They have drones in the county that are now available for assessment and monitoring. Not only the depth finders that are constantly, either marked permanently on a bridge or a marker. We have the ability to go out there and go and look at these levels. Carbon County Command Center, C4, the fact that we have a permanent, static, and mobile structure to come out and assess and react prior to an event taking full effect. That's a huge improvement over what we've had before. The MOIs and the MOUs with multiple agencies and departments across the state, county, nationally, and right over the state line. We have a lot of people that are ready to react and implement our policies here in Carbon County, whether it's down in Bags or here in Saratoga or up near, the nothing border near Pathfinder. I mean, if we're worried about water companies, why aren't we worried about what's coming out of our reservoir? If this is a water problem, let's look over the whole county and we are better prepared to deal with that. And as a former guardsman who's been activated, I know that we have a better notification and activation relationship with the National Guard. And that's something that has to be considered when people say, well, it's sandbagging, but the Guard comes out and does that. I've been on the other side. Administratively, it takes at least 72 to 96 hours to even write the orders for the mission, let alone contact the soldiers, see if they're available, activate them, and then they got to get out here. So if we do have a true catastrophic instantaneous event, all love to the National Guard. They may not even be able to get the Title 10 authorization to activate their soldiers in time to get them out here. This is why things like us having the sandbagging machine and all the monitoring that we do across the county saying we need to activate ourselves before the Guard comes in is extremely important and should merit some consider for mitigation. Again, like I said, we had improved process of waiting and being prepared for response. And I say all of that to make this example is that as individual homeowners, property owners, and business owners, we're all offered consideration and insurance discounts on our homeowners or business insurance based on things like smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, sprinkler systems, the distance of our building to fire hydrants and fire departments. And these discounts are based on the concept of preparation, mitigation, and response capabilities. So I feel that there's a strong and legitimate argument, even if the map changes one way or another, that even the individuals that live within the current floodplain should be seeing a reduction in these insurance premiums across Saratoga and Carbon County. And in fact, based on the mitigation and preparedness that I spoke of, I think we could have an included and an alternative, even if it has to be on a legal basis argument, saying, we've decided to participate in this program, but I think your rates and your requirements are ridiculous. And it's based on these things that not only you're not looking at with our ground, because you won't come and see our ground, but our capabilities within the county. That might be a little non-germane to the situation you guys are working on, but I think we need to attack this from every angle possible. I don't promote utilizing the court's time, but it may come to that. But I think within that argument, adding this caveat of, hey, even the people that are currently in our floodplain, they might be getting charged a little too much for what they're doing or what we as a county have done to make sure that even if these things happen, we're ready for them. So with that, I appreciate all your time and I'd stand for any questions.
I appreciate your input. Any questions for And you know, to go along with that, and we did, we started preparing early. Everybody was concerned. We hadn't had that much snow fall in a long time. Nobody knew how it was gonna come off. That's always the question. How's it gonna come? And but we started preparing early. We had plans together. We had people together. We'd had several meetings with the county. The town we started implementing sandbags and putting them out here for people to pick up. Then we started picking up sandbags from the Wyoming State Penitentiary that Lenny Lehman had put together for them to fill, which never cost the town a dime except for travel over there to bring them back. And we were prepared somewhat, but you know, but there's, you know, hopefully something's going to happen next year with one of the places you probably sandbagged was Boozer Creek, Headgate. Soil Conservation is supposedly working on a plan that supposedly, I was told, was going into effect this coming summer, where they were going to redo that, maybe early summer before high water, to kind of get that channel back in where it needs to be, because it's directly hitting the head gate there and the bank above. So
And I would agree that along with proving our response mitigation and response capabilities, asking, what are the things you would require
yeah,
to reduce this? I mean, I'll never stop saying I'm not a fan of spending taxpayers' money. I'm not even a fan of anybody collecting it. But I have found that any effort that is truly impactful to the people, you can raise a good deal of those funds privately. And I've also said, and I will always continue to say, if there's grants out of there, they might as well come to Carbon County and Platte Valley.
well,
We can find out what they would require to slender that down and reduce those premiums. You know, I'm not an engineer and I'm not a public employee, but whatever help you guys need from a cantankerous guy that likes to read, research, and make arguments, I'll be happy to fill that.
you know, and I've spoken directly to Senator Loomis, and she's not for all the grants and all the spending that's going on, but like she said, Wyoming needs to get their fair share, so let's get on board, because they continue to hand them out, so we might as well get what we can.
Get the milk from the cow before you slaughter it. Plenty of focus on slaughtering that cow.
Yeah,
Thanks, Joey.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you. Questions, concerns? Anybody want to provide anything else?
Something that I might add is, I've been here 60 years and I've never seen the flood take a building. I'd never seen it do enough damage besides maybe seeping into the basement to the ground. I've seen it come out of the river in two places, at the inn and there before the bridge is about the only two places I've seen it come out of the river. And I've been through 83, 84, which I think was the highest.
I do too.
If you look at the numbers, it supposedly wasn't. But that's the only year I really seen it come out of the river in a lot of places. The golf course is one other place it comes off and goes across, but nothing life threatening in 60 years. You know, if it comes out of the banks, it'll dissipate. You know, unless there's a major rain flash flood when we got the highest water, then something might happen. But
Randy, you're probably in that same boat. Do you remember?
Dad told me years ago, it came up to the back door of the old shop. And that had to be in the 50s or 40s.
wasn't that the year that the ice jammed on the bridge?
They had that ice jam and they went to blow the ice jam up, blew the bridge up.
Yeah. Well, they put dynamite in and blew it, and it blew the water back a little bit and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So they put twice as much in, and they said it blew to where you can see the bottom of the river, and then it took the bridge out.
Otherwise,
That's laid plans and prices.
the only way that water's gonna come downtown, if something gets hung up on Bridge Street Bridge, it diverts the water right past my shop down Bridge.
Yeah.
And
Well, where's the kicker check to the community after every 10 years of no events that we've been paying into?
Yeah,
Okay, give us 75% back for things like mitigation improvement when you don't use it.
yeah.
But it got spent in California.
Oh, of course it did.
yeah,
The only problem I really see is Boozer Creek. That could be a big issue, really could.
But
And-
in that Boozer Creek event, which could be catastrophic to the property,
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense to me that, I'll pick on you guys. That in the meantime, between now and when that does happen,
mhm.
that they're not paying into the fund. But Angie Cooley or Josh Wood or somebody that lives on the other side of the block from me is,
Yes, yeah.
right? Because when something like that does happen, yeah, it might take a building or two, but it's gonna be over here, not over there. I think everybody.
Yeah, it'll be up, it'll come down across the golf course.
sure.
Yeah,
Well, and I asked him in one of the first flood plan meetings we had last year or early this spring. I said, worst case scenario, if we dug loose and it was like possibly 2 to 3 homes on the Saratoga end. So, which no homes, any home would be devastating, but that was worst case scenario. Well, I wish more people would have attended.
I've heard it before, I did.
I really did, we did have, and I think Emery did too. There have been a couple of people come in and looked at the floodplain map and go, oh, I'm not in it, I'm not coming. So, thank you very much. But that did happen and, hey, I will say this council trying to look out for the best interest of Saratoga. Because that's why we live
Well,
here.
it's like now, you're trying to help the people that may have to buy it.
Sure.
There's gotta be some people got their houses financed in the floodplain along the river. Try to keep the cost down or something,
I'm kind of like him. If it gets me, we're in a bad way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just a little bit before me, so we're in a bad way.
It's on way before us.
Yeah, so that's, but
It's not gonna get that high.
That's how much it matters. It'll never get me and I'm still here. So
Yeah.
we have a legitimate argument.
yeah. But anyway, well, I'm gonna end this workshop. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank John. I apologize. What was your name again?
Joey Correnti.
Joey. I want to thank you for speaking. Randy, thank you for volunteering and kind of let Emery work with you too and on what he needs to do, and we'll go from there. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks for showing up, Arthur.
yeah.
Thanks.
I jumped in earlier.
Huh?
Terry said she had a dream that I got fired off town council, so. I'm like, that's like my dream.
Funny thing on the other side. In 2015, when Colorado was suing us for the amount of water that Wyoming was releasing through the plat. It was the same year, the second year I got activated as National Guardsman. Go down and help northern Colorado with all the flooding. And the first thing I said when I stepped foot on there and met with, I think it was a county commissioner was, so you think you're getting enough of our water yet? Or drop the lawsuit, we'll help you out. All I know is that you say we weren't giving you enough. Now you say we can flood help.
I like that comment.
That's the beauty of where we're at on this side of the continental divide basin. Everything's moving away from us, even when it's moving through us. So
It is.
Based on best available.
So can we go back to work?
Made an assumption.
I haven't seen her white pickup.
It's parked in the driveway, so
Probably why. I don't go down that alley, but,
yeah. No, it's in the cottage driveway.
oh.
It's sitting back in behind the bush. So probably- No, she doesn't go back till the 28th, I think.
She just needs to retire. She retire, yeah.
She wants to go back to work and she's got to go through chemo and stuff. So I'm like, you shouldn't be around sick people because,
Mm-mm.
yeah,
You don't have an immune
it's a
system.
cold or anything.
Could really slap her. Yeah.
But
One voice.
Except my boy, he's home himself.
Okay.
Getting over to his mom.
Yeah, we'll kick it off at 6.
Yeah, he did.
we'll start without you if you're late. I said, we'll start without you if you're late.
Okay.
Yeah, so she goes back to 28th, I think it is.
Yeah.
Well, I hope everything works out for her.
I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I'm sure try to.
It's gotta be hard.
Oh, yeah. She's,
And want to take one hit, or both of yours. Be like, wow.
they said they would take my dick off. I'd say, I'm gonna die.
Oh, so are you gonna lose your long-term renters this year from Iowa? Are they gonna have it enclosed enough to live in?
They won't have it enclosed enough to live in. Chad's might be, but I doubt it.
He's the one that's wrapped right now. Man, they did a lot of work in a little bit of time, and then the last few times I've been up by there, it's like, what are you guys doing? You slowed down.
Yeah, did you drive up in and look?
No, I didn't. I almost did that the other night
Drive
to
up
see
in and look?
Jacob. Yeah, well. You got to run the big hoe, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
That's a big hoe.
3 scoops, it fills my dump truck to the night.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, 6-foot bucket.
Jacob was saying it's digging now like no problem. So
Kinda, with 6-foot bucket on. If you're digging it at the wrong angle, it doesn't dig it real well. But if you turn around at the other angle, it digs it like nothing.
just the way it's laid in. And
Yeah, yeah, it's because it's laid in like that and it fractures real good, but with the 3-foot bucket.
that sounds pretty promising. Thanks, sir. That sounds pretty promising. Have you know Jerry, right?
Yeah, we met at the gas station and all
Yeah.
that.
We were wrestling over a cup of coffee. I won.
You. Okay.
Don't believe that. Jeez.
No, I don't believe. We got asked if we'd go over and meet with the realtors the other morning unexpectedly, me and him and Mike. I'm like, what are we getting into? And they wanted us to commit to something. We're like, "Mm-mm." They wanted us to commit to what's gonna happen with the Airbnbs.
Oh,
And we're no, because they're still so far out, they don't.
Jim, that's a good question. We'll get
you would
back
think
to
they
you.
would want the Airbnbs. That's more.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. They said they had a few people that was upset because they don't have, and like Emery explained to them, they're looking at some stuff but it's a long way off. Hell,
And I think you're messing with people's personal property, their business. What they do.
I had a lot of discussions about this, Jerry.
Yeah.
Nobody's. Same thing. Somebody sues somebody. What's that? Extend, yes.
I heard there was this lawsuit going in Pinedale, I think it was,
Is there?
over it. Yeah.
Didn't you say there was some up at somewhere?
It's in its infancy, but.
Yeah.
That's what will happen. Pass this law that short-term rentals, basically, if you allow single family housing, you gotta allow short-term rentals.
Participation.
Yeah, you can't do it one way or the other. Yeah.
And that's,
And I've had people say, well, there's people coming and going in there all the time. And I'm like, if people are living there
So it's kind of.
for a month, they're coming and going all the time.
Yeah.
If they're living there for life, they're coming and going all the time. Well, there's shits everywhere. I'm like, people's shits everywhere anyway.
You drive around the Airbnb.
Because-
That's something.
They are.
Around here.
Yeah,
You know, you get Airbnb website.
yeah.
well, the one Louis Braun got rented right now. It's the one on the corner of Rochester where the truck got, what is that, 10th? Yeah, it'd be 10th, where it turns on 10th. Truck route.
Yeah.
That is a nice place. They got 4 or 5 I think it's 5 bedrooms with what's downstairs and everything. Well, his whole family come out. They rented that. I mean,
I
what a
get, I
perfect
get a lot of family reunions, wedding groups.
It's nice when they got itty bitty kids, like. They got their own.
Yeah.
I got it. Like this one up there's got a backyard where you can actually let a little kid out. They can't get out of the backyard. I mean, it's nice.
For participation. The crap is that we're running dollars to get some, the few we've stayed in, is you get some people who have kids who will buy them, donations, like know nothing about the house whatsoever. We had gone on when the rent is one for land, and plumbing, and electrical. For the heater, right above the heater in the corner, so the heater was broken, it was on. The oven was broken, and so they're 20 years old, that's like California. And we're so sorry, it's fine. And then burn your own house.
They burn it down with somebody in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
County commissioner, and that's, you know, I know, see it on the hotels. 170 national night, and by the time you go to the check out the cleaning fee,
And like I've said all along, the only thing I'm against is a corporation coming in and buying up a city block, and that's all they're doing. I don't want to see that.
Or, like I said, I hate it, but if.
See you later, sir. Thanks again.
How you been, John?
Good.
How's the office going?
What